I spent my daughter's college fund on buying a new house after she befriended my cheating ex's mistress and called her mom. Now she's begging for forgiveness, but I'm not sure I'm ready to give it. I'm 44 years old, and I have an 18-year-old daughter, Mia. She's supposed to start college in a couple of months. But things have been far from normal in our family recently. I'm in the middle of a divorce from my husband, Jonathan, who's 45. He cheated on me with his 34-year-old secretary, Alicia. That affair had been going on for almost a year before he finally confessed it to me a few months ago. The moment he told me, I was shattered. The betrayal stung more than I could have ever imagined. As soon as he admitted it, I filed for divorce and moved out of our family home. I expected Mia to take my side, especially since I was the victim in all this. I mean, her father had lied, cheated, and destroyed our family. But instead of siding with me, she chose her father. It was a blow I wasn't ready for. The day Jonathan confessed, Mia wasn't home. I moved out immediately, packing up my things and leaving without the chance to say goodbye. For a whole week, I waited for Mia to reach out. I waited for her to ask where I was or how I was doing. But that call or text never came. After almost a week of silence, I broke down and texted her first. I explained that I was leaving her father because of the affair. Her response left me cold. She said she already knew but didn't care much because, in her words, it didn't concern her. I couldn't believe it. I thought maybe Jonathan had gotten to her first and twisted the narrative. Maybe he had painted me as the bad guy or minimized the severity of his betrayal. I tried to talk to her to set the record straight, but it didn't seem like it mattered to her. She knew the truth, and she had still chosen his side. As time passed, it became painfully clear that Mia wasn't interested in hearing my side of the story. She barely texted me, and when she did, her responses were short, almost dismissive. She agreed to meet with me a few times, but each meeting was strained. She would spend the entire time glued to her phone, showing no interest in engaging with me. It was like I was a stranger in her life. Then, about a week ago, I saw something on Instagram that broke my heart all over again. Mia had posted a picture of herself hugging Alicia, yes, the woman who had wrecked our family, and captioned it, "Mom," with a heart emoji. That post was the final nail in the coffin. I felt like I had lost everything. Not only had my husband betrayed me, but now my daughter was embracing the woman who had destroyed our family. I snapped. I called Mia. She didn't answer, so I called again. And again. 17 missed calls later, she finally picked up, and she was annoyed. Her irritation only fueled my anger. I demanded an explanation for the Instagram post. How could she do that? How could she call Alicia her mom? Mia didn't care. She told me it was none of my business and that I shouldn't be stalking her account. It's a public account, and I'm your mother. I shot back, my voice shaking with emotion. But she wasn't moved. She told me that I was overreacting, that she owed me nothing, and that if I had a problem with her relationship with Alicia, she would just block me so I couldn't see any more of her posts. Then she hung up. I sat there, staring at the phone, disbelief and hurt washing over me. My own daughter had blocked me because I dared to be upset that she was calling the woman who had ruined my marriage Mom. I cried for hours after that phone call. The sense of betrayal I felt was overwhelming. Jonathan's affair had broken me, but losing Mia to Alicia, that was something I wasn't sure I could recover from. But after crying my heart out, I decided I wasn't going to let anyone walk all over me anymore. Mia's behavior made it clear that she didn't care about me. I had spent so much time chasing after her, trying to win her affection, but it was clear that she preferred her new family over me. And if that was the case, then I had no reason to keep making sacrifices for her. For years, Jonathan and I had saved up a significant amount of money for Mia's college education. We had planned to split the cost of her tuition, and I had set aside a separate fund specifically for that. But now, seeing how she had treated me, I realized that I didn't owe her that money anymore. Why should I keep sacrificing for someone who had no respect or love for me? There was a house I had been eyeing for years. It was beautiful in a nice neighborhood, but it had always been slightly out of my budget. Jonathan had never wanted to move, and Mia had been adamant about staying close to her friends. But now that my marriage was over and Mia had made it clear she didn't need me, I decided it was time to do something for myself. So, I called the real estate agent, offered the money I had set aside for Mia's college fund, and bought the houses. It felt liberating. For the first time in months, I felt like I had taken control of my life again. The house was everything I had ever wanted, and I couldn't wait to move in. Once the deal was finalized, I posted a picture of the house on social media. I wanted everyone to know that I wasn't going to sit around crying over the pieces of my old life. I was moving forward. Jonathan found out about the houses through a relative and immediately called me. He was furious. He demanded to know how I could afford the houses, and I told him the truth. I had used Mia's college fund. "You what?" he yelled. "You spent our daughter's college money on a house? Are you insane?" I stayed calm. Why should I pay for her education when she clearly doesn't care about me? She's chosen her new family, Jonathan. She doesn't need me or my money anymore. "You're being petty and cruel," he spat. "Mia is still your daughter, no matter what's happened between us. This is just you being jealous of her relationship with Alicia." I laughed bitterly. "Jealous? You think this is about jealousy? This is about respect, Jonathan. Our daughter doesn't respect me. She doesn't care about me, and she's made that very clear. If she doesn't need me, she doesn't need my money." He couldn't argue with that, so I hung up the phone. But of course, Mia wasn't going to stay quiet. About an hour after my conversation with Jonathan, she called me. Unlike her father, she was sobbing. I could barely understand her through her tears. "How could you do this to me, Mom?" she cried. "I've always put you first. How could you take away my future like this?" I wanted to scream at her. How dare she say she'd put me first when she had so clearly chosen her father and Alicia over me? But instead, I calmly asked, "Were you putting me first when you blocked me on Instagram? When you called Alicia Mom? Was that you putting me first?" She cried harder. That meant nothing. I was just trying to make Alicia feel welcome. She's part of the family now, and I wanted to keep the peace. "But you're my real mom. You'll always be my mom." I didn't know whether to believe her. "You turned your back on me, Mia. You ignored me, dismissed me, and then blocked me when I expressed my hurt. How am I supposed to feel about that?" "I'm sorry, Mom," she sobbed. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I just didn't want to lose either of you. I was trying to balance my old family and my new one. I never expected you to take revenge on me like this." Hearing her say that word revenge made me pause. Had I really done this out of revenge? Was I punishing Mia for choosing Jonathan and Alicia over me? The guilt hit me like a tidal wave. Mia kept crying, hiccuping between sobs. I hadn't heard her cry like that since she was a little girl. It tore me apart to know I had caused her this much pain, but at the same time, I couldn't ignore the way she had hurt me. "I'm sorry, Mom," she whispered before hanging up. "Since that call, I haven't been able to stop thinking about what I did. Did I take things too far? Should I have handled it differently? All I know is that I'm still heartbroken, and now I'm not sure I can fix what's been broken between us." The last few months of Mia's life had been chaotic, a whirlwind of emotions, confusion, and ultimately, regret. She hadn't intended to push her mother away, but it had happened slowly and surely, as if a wall had been erected between them brick by brick. At first, she had thought she could straddle both worlds: the life with her mother, full of familiar comforts and routines, and the exciting new life her father was building with Alicia. Her father's promises had been tempting: a car, freedom, an apartment to share with her friends during her second year of college. At 18, those things felt like the ultimate markers of independence. And so, she'd made her choices. But those choices had cost her dearly. She hadn't expected the sharp pang of guilt that came with betraying her mother. The Instagram post where she'd referred to Alicia as Mom was just one moment, a simple photo with a caption, but it had unraveled everything. In that moment, Mia had crossed a line she hadn't even realized was there. It wasn't until her mother confronted her about it, eyes filled with pain and anger, that Mia began to comprehend the depth of the damage she'd caused. The fallout was swift and brutal. Her mother, already reeling from the betrayal of her husband's affair, had been blindsided by Mia's actions. The Instagram post had felt like the ultimate slap in the face, a public declaration that Mia had chosen her father and his new life over the woman who had raised her. To her mother, it was more than just a social media post. It was a clear signal that Mia had picked sides. And Mia's cold, dismissive attitude in the days and weeks that followed only made things worse. In truth, Mia hadn't known how to handle the situation. She loved her mother deeply, but she also felt the pull of her father's promises. The car, the apartment, it all seemed so exciting, and she had convinced herself that she wasn't really betraying anyone. Her father had spun it so well, making it seem as though she could have both: her relationship with him and Alicia, and her relationship with her mother. But as things played out, it became clear that this wasn't possible. Her mother wasn't just hurt, she was devastated. And Mia, despite her youth and inexperience, could feel the weight of what she had done pressing down on her like a lead blanket. It all came to a head the day Mia and her father, Jonathan, showed up at her mother's office. They had decided that it was time to confront her, to force a conversation. Mia didn't want to do it. Not really. Deep down, she knew that her mother didn't owe her any explanations, not after everything that had happened. But Jonathan had insisted that it was necessary, that they couldn't just leave things unresolved. So they went. Mia remembered how her mother had tried to ignore them when she saw them waiting outside her office. She walked briskly past, her face set in a hard, unforgiving expression. But Jonathan called out to her, and Mia, feeling a mixture of guilt and frustration, chimed in, telling her mother that she owed them an explanation. Looking back on it now, Mia realized how ridiculous that was. Her mother didn't owe them anything. In fact, if anyone had owed an explanation, it was Mia. Reluctantly, her mother had agreed to talk. They found a nearby restaurant, and as soon as they sat down, her mother launched into a tirade. Mia had never seen her like that, so hurt, so raw. She spoke about the betrayal, about the years of love and care that had been wiped away by one thoughtless Instagram post. She talked about the affair, about how devastated she had been to learn that Jonathan, after nearly 20 years of marriage, had chosen someone else. And then she turned her focus to Mia, telling her that she couldn't believe her own daughter would side with the woman who had ruined their family. Mia had tried to defend herself, but every word she said sounded hollow, even to her own ears. She had never intended to hurt her mother, but that didn't matter. The damage was done. And when her mother finally stood up, grabbed her burrito, and left the restaurant without a backward glance, Mia felt the sting of rejection in a way she had never experienced before. The next few weeks were unbearable. Her mother cut off all communication, refusing to respond to texts or calls. Mia felt like she had been cast adrift in a sea of uncertainty. She tried to focus on her upcoming move to college, but everything felt off. Her excitement about starting this new chapter of her life was overshadowed by the gaping hole that her fractured relationship with her mother had left in her heart. And then, almost a month after their confrontation at the restaurant, Mia decided to write the email. It wasn't an easy decision. She spent hours agonizing over what to say, how to explain her actions. In the end, she decided to be brutally honest. She confessed that her behavior had been driven by selfishness, by the allure of the car and the apartment her father had promised. She admitted that she had chosen to push her mother away because she didn't want to face the inevitable questions about her relationship with Alicia. And finally, she apologized. It was a long, emotional email, filled with regret and guilt. For days, Mia waited for a response. The silence was excruciating. She checked her inbox constantly, hoping for some sign that her mother was willing to forgive her. But as the days dragged on, Mia began to lose hope. Maybe her mother had finally decided that enough was enough, that the damage was too great to repair. Then, one morning, the email arrived. Mia's hands trembled as she opened it, her heart pounding in her chest. Her mother's words were both a bomb and a knife. She explained how deeply hurt she had been, how Mia's actions had made her feel like a failure as a mother. She didn't sugarcoat the pain she had experienced. But at the same time, there was an openness to the email, a willingness to try to move forward. Her mother wrote that she missed Mia terribly, and though it would take time for her to fully forgive, she couldn't bear the thought of cutting her daughter out of her life entirely. She wanted to try to rebuild their relationship, slowly and carefully. Mia cried as she read the email. It wasn't the unconditional forgiveness she had secretly hoped for, but it was something. It was a chance. They began talking again, tentatively at first. Their conversations were awkward and stilted, as if they were strangers trying to get to know each other for the first time. But over time, the awkwardness faded. They started to talk about more than just the past. They talked about college, about Mia's hopes and fears for the future. Slowly, the bond between them began to mend, though it was clear that the scars would remain for a long time. Therapy was Mia's idea. She knew that they couldn't just sweep everything under the rug. The betrayal had been too deep, and both of them had been wounded in ways that wouldn't heal without help. Her mother agreed, and they began attending online therapy sessions together. The sessions were hard some days. It felt like they were reopening old wounds rather than healing them. But Mia's mother insisted that this was necessary, that they needed to face their pain head-on if they were ever going to move forward. Through therapy, Mia began to understand the full scope of the hurt she had caused. She realized that her mother's pain wasn't just about the Instagram post or the affair. It was about the years of love and care that had been thrown aside for the sake of something as trivial as a car. Her mother had sacrificed so much for her, and Mia had repaid her by siding with the very people who had caused her the most pain. For her part, Mia's mother began to see that while Mia's actions had been hurtful, they hadn't come from a place of malice. Mia was young, impressionable, and caught between two worlds. She had made a terrible mistake, but it was clear that she regretted it deeply. Therapy helped them both come to terms with their emotions, and slowly, they began to rebuild their trust in each other. The day Mia was to leave for college was bittersweet. In her final therapy session before the move, Mia had told her mother that she wanted her to be the one to drive her to campus. She didn't want Jonathan or Alicia there. This was something she needed to do with her mother. It was a significant gesture, one that showed how far they had come in the last few weeks. Her mother had agreed. though part of her still harbored doubts. Could they really move past everything that had happened? Could they ever return to the close bond they had once shared? The drive to the campus was long and quiet. Mia and her mother talked about mundane things: packing, dorm assignments, and the logistics of college life. But beneath the surface, both of them